And I kind of want to just leave some room for you guys to ask me some questions about what I just brought to you. And then also I kind of want to ask you maybe some questions about what you're doing and seeing if maybe we could share some of the hybrid projects that we are either working on already or might be, you know, with this new year, this new beginning, might be open to trying. But let's see if you, first of all, if there's anything that you guys can, you know, anything you want to disagree with me or ask me to slow down and explain. Yes, Janie.
I actually have a really specific question for you about about your book. You said at the end of the publisher pulled your photo collages.
Yeah.
Did you? Okay, I can talk about it more later. I'm working on a project that the world presented me with, where I'm working with text and image, drawing, photographs, a lot of erasure work that really only works as image. It's interesting you were writing horoscopes. I'm erasing horoscopes.
I like it.
Comes out of trauma in my case also. But did you think at all about going to another press when they nixed your photographs?
I did. But I decided that I'd rather have the book out. I didn't want to back up and wait 2-3 years. And we had a long discussion about it. And they're now going to be publishing this collage novel that I've been working on forever, full collage, full images, full color. And so they've come around. I find that presses often, it's a catch-22. If you're not anybody on their radar, if they don't think you're anybody special, you don't have this kind of platform that writers who've done this before have, then you can't do it in their mind. But how can you become that? You know, how can you get your work out there if you're not allowed to do it? I've had so many different folks, editors say, you know, yeah, no, you can't write the book that way. Sorry, you know, it can't be a collage. And I was like, well, how about this book? Well, that's Maggie Nelson. She can do it, but you can't. I'm kind of like, well, what do you mean? You know, so I do find that there are a lot of presses tend to want you to back off hybrid work. And I didn't push back in that instance, but I push back now. I mean, I won't do anything else but this kind of work from now on, I don't think. But I find that people tend to like it when it's there and they can kind of say, hey, that's beautiful. But when they see it in its raw form, it often turns people off. Sometimes they were just worried about, I don't know why they were worried. I didn't even want them to be color. You know, it wasn't going to be an expense. They just didn't think it worked. Maybe they were right. I don't know. What else?
I had I had a question about your first example of Jeff Dyer's work, because what kind of came to mind was creative nonfiction. And I guess I'd like to have maybe speak about maybe the differences of what you're talking about in terms of hybrid and like creative nonfiction.
Yeah. Well, I think that creative nonfiction is a great container. You know, it can be. Oh, is that me? I'm hearing myself echoing. Sorry. Maybe if you're not on, if not speaking via mute, I don't know if, yeah, there we go. I think that like creative nonfiction over the last 20 years has really become more and more hybrid. It's opening itself up to just the very things that we're talking about. I think poetry also is like a book like Citizen. Is that a book of poems? You know, I would argue that it isn't. I'd argue that it's a hybrid text, but she puts it inside the idea of a lyric. And I think creative nonfiction gets to kind of put, you know, an essay or a memoir. A memoir becomes more and more like a novel these days, or essays can become utterly collaged or fragmented. There's so many different kind of, like, you know, the 300 Arguments by Sarah Maguso is just a set of kind of isolated sentences that she's taken out of a larger text. And so it's almost like erasures, like you were talking about. I think it's a very versatile form, but I think that the hybrid urge or impulse is something that cuts across all genre and can include and fuse genres together. If that makes sense. Who was asking that question? I didn't see the speaker. Is it Sue?
Yes.
Okay, good. I don't know if that answered your question or if you have thoughts about it.
You just gave me more to think about, so I appreciate that. Thank
Oh,
you.
good. Okay. Glenn, you had a hand up there?
Yeah. This was really wonderful and a lot of useful stuff for me, and on a couple fronts. One, I'm working on a hybrid project myself right now, but I also was really struck by your early comment about writing poems that you referred to as having a failure of nerve, which is something I feel like I often suffer from. I don't push where the work really wants to go. And so this idea of hybrid work and collage as a kind of method to keep opening the work up, to me, seems really useful. And for what it's worth, it really kind of complements some things Helen Rubinstein was saying this morning too. So that's really kind of nice. But what I wonder, moving in that direction as a way of uncovering material also seems to me like it makes the process messier in a way, like, well, what is this thing? And it opens up sort of more and more possibilities. When you think about failure of nerve, do you feel like, okay, there is a moment when you know what the work really needs to be, or is it sort of an endless kind of process that at some point you just make decisions that this is where it'll go?
It's a really good question, and I'm curious. And I'm going to ask you guys to do what Janie did and maybe describe kind of what your potential projects that you're working on. But I think, yes, I think it often becomes this endless thing that can get kind of really messy. And I also think it can be, I know about my buddy Vivi will often challenge me and make sure I'm not avoiding the depth of a lyric or the clarity of a short story. Like, what are you trying to avoid something by collaging all the things together? Can you go into a lyric poem or go into a single form and let it be what it is and let that have it, and there are times when I can, but for me, the bigger project is always requiring more than one form, and it does click at some point, or it doesn't work. Like right now I have 3 or 4 projects going on at once, and 2 of them are not working. One of them is driving me crazy, and one of them just kind of clicked. And it's like, do what I do? Do I turn it to that project and work on that because it clicked? Or do I keep juggling the other 2? So it becomes a kind of question of, it's, how ADD or ADHD am I, and how much can I handle not knowing? It's a lot of shuffling of paper, I find, and unfortunately a lot of printing of paper. I try to print on backs of paper, but it's often just trying to see it, lay it out, put it together. I make handmade collages, so it really is something that it's a way that I work. But it can be maddening, and I actually have found that when I get really depressed and very specifically get kind of oh, woe is me, I suck, the world hates me, when I catch myself doing that on every single walk I take for like a week, I'm actually really close to figuring something out. And I have to just kind of say, get over yourself. None of that really means anything, but maybe you're getting to something. Listen to the moaning, because it might be actually that you're just, and it feels like a failure of nerve, but labeling something a failure of nerve can be a problem too, because those Virgo poems were some of the best things they did, and they taught me how to look at the rest of the book. If I threw them out because I thought they were just kind of cutesy and not very deep, I wouldn't have had that book work for me. So yeah, I think we can be our own worst critics sometimes. Yeah.
Sebastian, can I ask you another technical question?
Please.
And in terms of handling the paper, I'm a very tactile person and I like having the paper. But as I'm sure you know, sometimes the project just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah. I've been using Scrivener to manage the text, and it just doesn't manage images well at all. Do you know of anything better? Do you have a system that works for you, or tips or techniques? Because Boy,
I'm
it's
curious.
it's a pain.
Yeah, I'm curious if other people do, because I'm a bit of a Luddite and a bit of a spaz. Scrivener
Mm.
did not work for me, and it doesn't work visually. It's a kind of it's too. I'm not a spreadsheet person. I think there are
Mm.
spreadsheet people and non-spreadsheet people, and I'm no judgment. And there may be some hybrid people who are a little bit of each. I'm very much not a spreadsheet person, and so when things start getting spreadsheeted, if I can do that, uh, I get really bored. So I go back to the tactile, laid out on a table, um, obsessively move it around. But does anybody else have an answer to that? Because it's a great question. And I know that there's an app for it, for sure. Um, Anybody? No? Nobody's going to bail me out here? No help here? No? Leaving me hanging? You're holding, oh my God, this is really uncool.
I'll just say I'm like you, Sebastian. Everything is on the table. I spread images and pages and everything. I don't use any sort of.
Yeah.
My table's not big enough.
Yeah.
My floor's not big
Floors
enough.
are good. Floors are good.
You
Yeah, I'm on
an
the
art
floor.
table. You have an art
Yeah.
table. Big art tables. Yeah. If
I
you
have
have space.
I have that kind of space, but it's like, I mean, the text pieces I'm working with, I probably have 80 of them, text pieces.
Yep.
And then when you layer in on top of that an equal number of images, which like I said, Scrivener won't handle anyway. Scrivener's great. I'm finding great for moving the text around once I figured out where I want it to go by,
Yeah.
I don't know. So I was hoping somebody had a magic idea for handling images, but
No.
that's technically what I'm finding to be the most challenging.
It's important. It's important,
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious if anybody else has either a project that they're doing. Janie, yours sounds really fascinating. I'm curious, Glenn, what yours is. But yes, Andrea.
I'm working on a collection of essays that also I'm really interested in going more hybrid and bringing in some prose poetry.
Yep.
And it's funny because in our application for the M.F.A, we submitted 25 pages. And then Glenn followed up and said, why don't we strip it down to 10 for what we submit to our mentors? And I stripped all the prose poetry out. So I think I must be, paranoid that isn't as good. But I really wanted to ask you, what is it about maybe an essay that tells you this might be better as a prose poem? Yeah. Or what is it about a prose poem that, you just really love and you say, I'm so glad that I went at the more abbreviated version?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the answer is going to be different for everybody, but I think it's something that you have to fit. For me, if you're going to be doing this kind of shape shifting in form, you have to have a kind of radar with it. For me, a poem is this is just how I work now. It's just me. But if a poem comes to me as I'm walking, or it comes vocally or verbally, or like almost like a song, it literally comes to mind, and I write it down, I trust that that's a poem, and I let the lines break as they in relationship to the voice. If it doesn't have that musicality in it, I'm not going to try too hard to put it into a poetic form. I'm just going to put it into a block of prose. And sometimes if I'm writing, it comes musically, and I'm just it's coming too fast, I'll just make it a block of prose and say, well, it'll turn itself into a poem or not. So in some ways, my answer to that question is I write everything in small bits. I don't write, I rarely write anything more than 2 or 3 pages at a time. And it usually forms a kind of unit, and then I try to see if it fits with other units, like with a lot of white space,
Yeah,
so
I do the same.
Yeah, so I don't really know how do you, I love the idea that you took it out. I think that's part of the process. You say, you know what, that's not good enough, but then you put it back in,
Stephen Dunn is my mentor this semester, and he said, send me that stuff.
Yes.
So I'm going to send him now my full 25 pages. And I'm nervous and excited to see if there's any of them that he grabs out of there and says, go with this.
I hope he does.
We'll see.
I think a good reader hears somebody say, yeah, I don't think that's good enough. And the first thing they say is, let me see it. Because they often got more stuff, it's got more heat or more depth than we can handle as writers. You know what I mean? At first we need somebody else to say, no, that's what's really good. And it's, and
Is there
it feels-
anyone you'd recommend to really dive into in terms of like studying prose poetry? You gave wonderful hybrid examples, but I mean specifically,
Like-
maybe even, I love Maggie, but
other books in that vein, I find that early Michael Ondaatje is really helpful because he's doing stuff that is really kind of radical and very sparse. He's a fiction writer, so he's got all the fiction writer skills. But his early books, they don't really work like novels. They work kind of like, I don't know what they are, but they're very sparse and very poetic, and they're beautiful. So I recommend them here. This book of poems by Van Jordan, Magnolia, is incredible because it's a book of forms. He does a lot of poems in the form of screenplays. He does a couple poems, or a bunch of them, in the form of dictionary definitions. He combines the haiku with the blues form and turns it into a haiku. He does all these different things, and he writes a kind of it's basically like a novel or a movie, but through poetic forms. But also he messes with and creates new forms. So that's a book I'd recommend him first thing. Yeah.
absolutely, wrote it down. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. We got about 5 minutes. I'm curious if anybody else has either a project they're working on, I can bug Glenn about his, or one that might have kind of come up hearing about this, thinking, I was going to throw all that away, but maybe actually, yeah, ... Nobody's going to bite. All right, Glenn, I got to go back to you, man, for 10 points. No, I feel like we're in the Hollywood Squares.
Right.
Oh, yeah,
I've got a question about
good.
audience for the hybrids. Some of these you said are struggles to read, and how do they find their audience? How do you find your audience?
Yeah, good question. I think that the truth is, dictees are very challenging and difficult and sophisticated. It's a book that I think not many people are going to enter into very easily or willfully, but like Jenny said, it pays, you benefit if you do. I think that we're more and more hybrid readers. I think younger writers and readers are used to looking at things on the screen and tablet. I think we're used to the graphic novel. I think actually on the other side, the show, all the stuff, I don't even call it TV anymore, but all the stuff we're watching now that are miniseries or short movies, they're getting more and more literary and text-based too. The cartoon is going to kind of, I think that I think the audience for this is growing. I think the problem is the publishing world is a couple steps behind. And I think that the truth is small presses get it more than, big presses, but small presses often don't have the money or the backing to do it. It's often a matter of, costs. And so I think the collaborative spirit is the way, is to, like this book, The Life and Times of American Crow, I made it, it's a collage novel in 11 chapbooks. And the chapbooks come together to form a box set. And each chapbook has a postcard inside it. And there's a mural in the center of it. And there's a CD of music inside of that. It's just completely, and I work with 8 or 9 different artists to do that. So in some ways, that collaborative effort, it's book arts kind of stuff. It's limited in one way, but by working with 8 or 9 different people and using all these different forms, you're potentially growing your audience, because somebody who might like, this kind of book art stuff, but may not read a novel like this, might be interested. A person who's interested in that artwork might be, so that's one way, is that you collaborate with people and you create a kind of audience through a group effort. I think you got to, like anybody else, I think you have to build a platform for your work, and getting yourself out there. And unfortunately, my social media skills are limited. So, I think hybrid form is perfect for the social media, for Facebook and Twitter and Instagram even more, but you have to really be on it in ways that I just kind of lose interest. So I don't know if that's a really good answer, but I think I just don't believe people when they say there's no real market for hybrid work. I think we love it when we find it. when it speaks to us. Like if you go in a book, like a AWP or a bookstore, and a really cool book, a hybrid book kind of sticks out, you just like find it and go, I want that book. You don't even know what it is. So I think, yeah, not a great answer. Sorry.
No,
Yeah.
I have no clue what a good answer would be. So that sounds great.
Okay, good. It was a good answer. It was one of my best, actually. Yeah. Somebody did it in the chat. Was there a mention of a book?
No,
Oh,
there's
good.
a press in Iowa City called Prompt Press,
Yep.
an online press, and they offer interaction between various visual arts and literary arts.
That's awesome. If anybody has anything else like that, put it in there. There's great stuff online. There's a place called Slag City Review. There's a place called what's it called? Zocalo Square, Tupelo Review. These are all online journals. Blackbird Review that do incredible hybrid forms, and it's, you can really do it well now. Really beautifully, and it doesn't cost. The printing costs don't come into play. Yeah, Glenn, I think it's actually 4:30. Should I stop on a dime here and should we let it go, or what's your feeling?
It's really kind of up to you. If people want to keep going, that's fine, or we can wrap it up.
Yeah. Any other questions or any other desire to share a project? If there is that there, we'll keep going. If it isn't, I feel good. My dog really wants to walk, so there's that. It's been raining all day.
Well, it seems like maybe you've given us all a lot to think about and
maybe too much
here. So,
yeah, so I knew I was trying to do a little too much there, but thank you so much for listening. And I hope by going to some of these texts and by thinking about your own work a little differently, that maybe you'll find that hybridity is more to your liking than you thought. So good luck. I'm going to sit in on some more events as I can, if you guys let me, and I'm really excited for you. And Glenn, good luck. I know the pandemic probably put a big couple spokes in the bicycle wheel, but
that's for sure.
Well, as my friend who loves boxing said, the best boxers box from the bottom, whatever that means. But I think it means, you got to fight hard, even if it's, things are not going your way. I don't think you guys are starting at the bottom, but I think that it's a brave move, and I'm so proud that you guys are doing it. Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us, Sebastian. I really appreciate it. Really loved your talk. And for everyone else, we've got some time now to enjoy New Year's Day, but then we're back at it tomorrow for a long day of events. So,
well, I hope to see you guys around
tomorrow. Thanks,
Glenn,
everyone.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
See you.
See you guys.
Bye.